I was sitting by a window this morning, watching the light change, not doing anything in particular, just sitting there, and I noticed how the shadows moved across the floor, slow and steady, without any hurry at all. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't ask permission. They just moved the way shadows do when the sun crosses the sky. And I thought, this is what it's like to grow old. Not the darkness people fear, but this gentle shifting, this quiet movement from one quality of light to another. No drama, no tragedy, just change, happening the way it always has, the way it always will. We spend so much time being afraid of it, don't we? Old age, we treat it like some sort of punishment, some cosmic mistake, as though life is supposed to stop at 40 or 50, and everything after that is just a slow, painful decline into irrelevance. But what if that's not it at all? What if we've been looking at it completely wrong? What if old age isn't about losing anything? What if it's about finally being free? Think about your life when you were younger. All that noise, all that constant motion. You were always running towards something or away from something, always trying to become someone, always worried about what people thought, what they expected, whether you were measuring up to some invisible standard that kept changing every time you thought you'd figured it out. There was this urgency to everything. You had to make something of yourself. You had to prove you mattered. You had to build a career, raise a family, make your mark, leave some kind of legacy. And underneath all of it was this quiet terror that if you stopped even for a moment, you might discover that you weren't actually anyone at all. So you kept moving, kept striving, kept adding layers to this thing you called yourself. More achievements, more responsibilities, more roles to play. Father, mother, worker, friend, neighbor, citizen. You piled them on like winter clothes, thinking that if you wore enough of them, you'd finally feel warm, finally feel safe, finally feel like you were enough. But it never quite worked, did it? No matter how many layers you added, there was always this sense that something was missing, that you should be doing more, being more, achieving more. The finish line kept moving, the goal kept shifting, and you kept running, exhausted, wondering when you'd finally be allowed to rest. Well, here's what nobody tells you. Old age is that rest. Not the rest of death, but the rest of finally being done with all that nonsense. The rest of no longer having to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. When you get old, something remarkable happens. Those layers you spent decades building, they start to fall away. Not because you're failing or declining, but because you simply don't have the energy to maintain them anymore. And more than that, you don't have the interest. You look at all that effort you used to put into being impressive, being important, being someone, and you think, why? What was that all for? The roles that once felt like your entire identity begin to loosen. You retire, and suddenly you're not your job anymore. Your children grow up and move away, and you're not primarily a parent anymore. Friends pass on, old routines dissolve, and one by one, all these things you thought were you aren't. And if you're clinging to them, if you're trying desperately to hold on, this feels like tragedy, like everything's being taken from you, like you're disappearing. But what if you're not disappearing? What if you're finally appearing? What if all those roles were just costumes you wore, and now at last you get to take them off and discover who's been wearing them all along? There's you. Just you. Not you, the important person, or you, the busy person, or you, the needed person. Just this awareness sitting here, breathing, noticing the light on the floor. That's what's been here the whole time. That's what remains when everything else falls away. And that, strange as it might sound, is exactly what peace feels like. Not the peace of having everything you want, but the peace of no longer needing to want anything at all. let me talk to you about being alone for a moment, because this is where so many people get frightened. They think old age means loneliness, isolation, being forgotten and left behind. And yes, it's true that as you get older, you often find yourself with fewer people around. Friends die, family gets busy with their own lives. The social world that once felt so full and demanding grows quieter. But here's what I want you to understand. Being alone is not the same thing as being lonely. Not even close. Loneliness is a kind of hunger. It's reaching out and finding nobody there. It's wanting connection and being denied it. It's feeling like you're on the outside of life, watching everyone else belong to something while you drift untethered and forgotten. But solitude is something entirely different. Solitude is what happens when you stop reaching out and discover that you don't actually need to. It's the realization that you're already complete, already whole, exactly as you are, without anyone needing to validate that or witness it or confirm it. When you're with other people, even people you love, there's always this subtle dance happening. They need something from you, or you need something from them. Even in the gentlest, kindest relationships, there's an exchange occurring. You're being the friend who listens, the parent who advises, the companion who keeps them from feeling alone. You're playing a role, performing a function, meeting an expectation, and that's fine. That's how human beings connect. But it's also work, isn't it? There's effort involved. There's a part of you that's always slightly on, slightly performing, slightly aware of how you're being perceived. In solitude, all of that drops away. You don't have to be anything for anyone. You don't have to maintain any particular version of yourself. You can just exist, unwitnessed and unjudged, with no need to explain or justify or make sense to anyone but yourself. You can sit in a chair for an hour, watching dust particles float through a beam of sunlight, and nobody's there to ask you why you're wasting your time. You can have tea at 3 p.m, or not have tea at all. You can think strange thoughts, feel odd feelings, move slow or fast or not at all. And there's no audience expecting you to be anything other than exactly what you are in that moment. There's a kind of freedom in that, a looseness, a relief from the constant low-level tension of being observed. I'm not saying relationships aren't valuable. They are, they're wonderful. But they're not the only source of meaning or peace or contentment. And in old age, when circumstances naturally create more solitude, you have this opportunity to discover something precious, that you are actually quite good company for yourself. You've lived long enough to have some interesting thoughts. You've seen enough to find things amusing or beautiful or worth noticing. You don't need someone else to point out that the evening sky is lovely or that the birds are singing. You can appreciate these things directly, immediately, without needing anyone to confirm that they're worth appreciating. This is a kind of self-sufficiency that younger people rarely develop. Not because they're incapable of it, but because they're too busy seeking validation from others. They need someone to witness their joy, their pain, their experiences, to make those experiences feel real. But you've been around long enough to know that your experiences are real, whether anyone witnesses them or not. The tea tastes good, even if you're drinking it alone. The morning air feels fresh, even if there's no one there to comment on it. Your life is happening, fully and completely, regardless of who's paying attention. And once you really understand that, once you really feel it, solitude stops being something to fear or avoid. It becomes a gift, a space where you can simply be without performance or pretense or any need to be anything other than this person in this moment, alive and aware and perfectly, quietly content. That's not loneliness, that's peace. Deep, genuine peace that doesn't depend on anyone else showing up to make it real. You know what's really interesting about getting old? You stop caring so much about whether things are impressive. When you're young, you're always trying to make moments special, make experiences count, turn ordinary life into something worth telling stories about. You go places not just to go there, but to be able to say you went there. You do things not just to do them, but to have done them. There's always this audience in your head, real or imagined, that you're performing for. You eat a good meal, and immediately you're thinking about who you'll tell. You see something beautiful, and you want to capture it, share it, get someone else to validate that yes, this thing is indeed beautiful, and you were right to notice it. Even your private pleasures carry this slight shadow of if only someone knew. It's exhausting, really, because it means you're never fully present with anything. You're always one step removed, already turning the experience into a story, already thinking about how it will sound when you describe it later. But old age does something wonderful to you if you let it. It removes the audience, not because people stop caring about you, but because you stop needing them to care. You stop needing every experience to be validated or witnessed or turned into something impressive. And when that happens, when you finally let go of the need for recognition, something shifts. Life becomes simpler, more direct, more real. You can drink a cup of coffee in the morning and just drink the coffee. Not think about whether it's good coffee or expensive coffee or the kind of coffee someone interesting would drink. Just taste it. Feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. Notice how the steam rises and dissipates into air. That's it. That's the whole experience. And it's enough. You can take a walk and not need it to be a meaningful walk or a healthy walk or the kind of walk that counts towards some goal. You just walk. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice how the light falls through leaves. Hear sounds without labeling them or judging them or turning them into anything other than what they are. There's a quality of appreciation in this that younger people rarely access. Not because they're incapable of it, but because they're too busy trying to extract meaning from everything, trying to make their lives add up to something significant. But here's what old age teaches you. Life doesn't need to add up to anything. It doesn't need to mean something beyond itself. A moment can be valuable simply because you're alive to experience it. The taste of bread, the feeling of air on your skin, the sound of rain on a roof. These things don't need to be part of some larger narrative. They're not building toward anything, they're just happening. And you're here for them, and that's the entire point. This is a kind of joy that has nothing to do with excitement or stimulation or novelty. It's quiet joy, steady joy, the joy of simply being alive and noticing that you are. You sit in your garden in the late afternoon, feeling the sun warm on your hands, and there's this sense of satisfaction, not because you've accomplished anything or proven anything or become anything, but because this moment, exactly as it is somehow perfectly fine, perfectly complete. No one's watching, no one needs to know. You're not describing it to anyone or turning it into a memory you'll revisit later. You're just here, now, experiencing this. And it's enough, more than enough. This is what freedom from the audience looks like. And it's one of the great gifts of old age. The discovery that life can be deeply, genuinely enjoyable without any external validation whatsoever. That you can appreciate beauty, taste flavor, feel sensation, without needing anyone to confirm that these things are worth appreciating. You are finally free to just enjoy being alive. Not for any reason, not toward any purpose. Just because you are, and this is what being feels like, and it's actually quite wonderful when you stop demanding that it be anything more than that. Now let me tell you about expectations, because this is where most of the suffering lives. We don't even realize we're carrying them most of the time. They're so familiar, so ingrained, that they feel like truth rather than choice. Your children should visit more often. They should call. They should remember They should appreciate everything you did for them. Your body should still work the way it used to. You should be able to do the things you could do 20 years ago. Your friends should stay in touch. Your life should feel settled by now. You should have figured things out. You should be happy. Should. It's a kind of violence, really, this constant measuring of what is against what should be. It means you're never actually here with what's happening. You're always in some imaginary version of reality where things are different, better, more aligned with your preferences. And the gap between those two realities, between what is and what should be, that gap is where disappointment lives, where resentment lives, where that constant low-level dissatisfaction makes its home. You're sitting with your grandchild, but you're also thinking they should visit more often, so the actual visit is contaminated by resentment about all the visits that didn't happen. You're eating dinner alone, but you're comparing it to dinners from 20 years ago when the house was full, so you can't actually taste the food or enjoy the quiet because you're too busy mourning what isn't there. It's a trap, and it's entirely self-created. Because here's the thing about expectations. They're not observations about reality. They are stories you're telling about how reality should be different than it is. And those stories, no matter how reasonable they seem, no matter how justified you feel in having them, they separate you from your actual life. Your actual life is what's happening right now. Your children visit as often as they visit. Your body moves as well as it moves. Your friends are as present as they're able to be. This is reality. This is what is. And you can spend your remaining years arguing with it, insisting it should be different, maintaining a constant state of disappointed resistance. Or you can relax, let go, stop demanding that life conform to your mental blueprints. Old age, if you're paying attention, does this naturally. You've been disappointed enough times to start seeing the pattern. The things you expected rarely arrived the way you imagined. The outcomes you were certain of didn't materialize. The people you thought would behave one way behaved another. Life just kept doing what it does, completely indifferent to your preferences, and gradually, through sheer repetition, you start to get it. You start to understand that your expectations don't control anything. They don't make things happen. They don't protect you from disappointment. They just create unnecessary suffering. So you begin slowly to release them, not through force or discipline, but through simple exhaustion. You're just too tired to keep arguing with reality, too tired to keep insisting that things should be different. And in that exhaustion, that letting go, something unexpected happens, but a peace arrives. Not the peace of getting what you want, but the peace of no longer being at war with what you have. Your daughter visits once a month instead of once a week. All right, when she does visits, you can actually listen to her voice instead of tallying up all the times she didn't visit. Your knees hurt when you climb stairs. Fair enough. You can appreciate the stairs you can still climb instead of mourning the mountains you used to hike. This isn't resignation. This isn't giving up, or settling, or accepting less than you deserve. This is something much more radical. It's the recognition that your expectations were never serving you in the first place. They were just creating distance between you and your actual experience. Without them, you're free to meet life as it comes. Each moment fresh, each interaction uncontaminated by resentment about past interactions or anxiety about future ones. Each experience allowed to be exactly what it is without being measured against some imaginary standard. There's a lightness to this, a kind of emotional ease that doesn't depend on circumstances being any particular way. You're not happy because things are going well. You're at peace because you've stopped demanding that they go any particular way at all. Your life is your life. These are your days. This is your body, your family, your particular collection of joys and sorrows and ordinary moments. You can spend your energy wishing it were different, or you can spend your energy actually living it. Old age offers you this choice over and over, until you finally get tired enough of suffering to choose peace instead. And peace, it turns out, was always available. You just had to stop expecting something else long enough to notice it. There's something I want you to understand about who you are, because I think this is where the real freedom of old age lives, and most people miss it entirely. For your whole life, you've thought you were your roles. You thought you were the job title, the family position, the social function. You were the teacher, the accountant, the mother, the father, the reliable one, the successful one. These weren't just things you did. They felt like the very core of your identity. And society reinforced this constantly. When people asked who you were, they meant, what do you do? Your worth was measured by your productivity, your usefulness, your contribution. You mattered because you fulfilled functions, because people needed you, because you played your part in the great machinery of social life. But then you get old, and all of that starts to dissolve. You retire, and you're not your profession anymore. Your children grow up and stop needing you in the same way. Your friends die, your responsibilities diminish. The roles that gave your life structure and meaning begin to fall away, one by one. And most people panic at this point. They feel like they're disappearing, like they're becoming nobody. Because if you're not your roles, then what are you? But here's the truth that old age reveals, if you're willing to see it. You were never your roles. You were never actually that job, or that title, or that function. Those were just temporary arrangements. Things you did for a while, ways you participated in the world, but they were never you. You, the actual you that's been here the whole time, you're something much simpler and much larger than any role could contain. You're the one who's been aware, the one who's been present, the consciousness that's been noticing everything, experiencing everything throughout your entire life. When you were 5 years old, running through a field, there was someone there experiencing that. When you were 20, falling in love, someone was there feeling that. When you were 40, stressed about work, someone was aware of that stress. And now, at whatever age you are, someone is here reading these words, thinking these thoughts. That someone, that awareness, that's what you actually are. And it hasn't changed. It hasn't aged. It's the same presence now that it was when you were 5. The circumstances are different. The body is different. The roles are different. But the one experiencing it all, that's been constant. This is what remains when all the roles fall away. Not nothing, not nobody, but this pure experiencing, this awareness that doesn't need a job title or a social function to exist. And here's what's remarkable about this awareness, this presence, it's not separate from the universe. It's not some isolated thing trapped inside your body. It's actually part of the same consciousness that's running through everything. The same awareness that looks out through your eyes, looks out through every living thing. The same energy that moves through you, moves through trees, through water, through wind, through stars. You're not a separate self having experiences. You're the universe experiencing itself through this particular form, for this particular time. When you really understand this, when you really feel it, something profound shifts. You realize you were never actually alone. Even when every human connection falls away, even when you're sitting by yourself in complete silence, you're still held by something vast. You're still part of the whole ongoing process of existence. The birds outside your window, same consciousness expressing itself differently. The trees in your garden, same energy, different form. The sky, the clouds, the earth beneath your feet, all of it, including you, one continuous unfolding of being. Nature doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't need you to be important or productive or useful. A tree doesn't justify its existence. A river doesn't earn its right to flow. They just are, and so are you. You're just as natural, just as valid, just as much a part of things as anything else that exists. You can sit on the ground and feel the earth beneath you, and you're not sitting on something separate from yourself. You're one part of the earth touching another part of the earth. You're the earth being aware of itself. You can look at the sky and realize that the same atoms that make up those clouds once made up other things and will make up still other things. Nothing is lost, everything just changes form. The substance of the universe rearranging itself endlessly, and you're part of that rearrangement. This is the companionship that old age offers, not the replacement of human relationships with philosophical concepts, but the recognition of a belonging that was always there. You belong here. You are supposed to be here. You're as natural and necessary as rain or wind or the turning of seasons. And this belonging doesn't depend on you doing anything or being anyone in particular. It's not earned or achieved. It just is. You're part of the whole. And the whole is completely fine with you being exactly as you are, slow, wrinkled, alone, quiet. However you are, you're still part of everything, still held, still home. This is what's here when the social structures fall away. Not emptiness, but fullness, not isolation, but connection to something so vast and so immediate that you can't actually be separate from it. You are the universe growing old in this particular form, and the universe doesn't judge that. It doesn't think old age is a failure or a tragedy. It's just one phase of an endless transformation. You are, quite simply, nature being natural, and there's nothing more peaceful than that. So here we are then. At the end of this conversation, though really nothing ends, does it? Everything just transforms, continues, becomes something else. I want you to understand something. Old age is not a mistake. It's not a punishment for having lived too long. It's not a slow catastrophe where everything good gradually disappears. That's just the story we tell ourselves because we're afraid. But the truth, the actual truth, is simpler and kinder than that. Old age is the moment when life finally stops asking so much of you, when the demands ease, when the roles dissolve, when you're finally allowed to just be here without justification, without purpose, without needing to become anything other than what you already are. The wrinkles on your face, they're not evidence of decay, they're a map of every expression you've made, every emotion you've felt, every year you've been alive and responsive to life. They're beautiful, in their way, honest, real. The slowness of your movement, it's not weakness, it's an invitation to notice things you used to rush past, to feel each step, to be present with the simple act of moving through space. There's a grace in slowness that speed never discovers. The quiet of your days, it's not emptiness, it's spaciousness. Room to breathe, room to think, room to simply exist without the constant noise of obligation and expectation. You are not less than you were. You are different than you were. And different is not diminishment. It's just change. Natural, inevitable, necessary change. The you that exists now, the you reading these words, you're complete, whole, exactly as you should be at this moment. Not lacking anything, not missing anything, not failing at anything. You have lived, you have experienced so much. You have felt joy and pain and everything in between. You have loved and lost and continued anyway. You have done your best, whatever that looked like. And now you get to rest. Not the rest of giving up, but the rest of being done with the struggle, done with trying to prove yourself, done with chasing after some future moment when you'll finally be enough. You're enough now, you always were. And this time you have left, however much or little it might be, it's not a countdown to nothing. It's just more life, more moments, more chances to notice the light on the floor, the taste of tea, the sound of birds, the feeling of being alive. Life doesn't need to be dramatic to be valuable. It doesn't need to be exciting or productive or meaningful in some grand sense. A quiet afternoon is just as much life as anything else. A slow walk, a long silence, a simple meal, these are not lesser experiences. They're just gentler ones. And gentleness, it turns out, is what you've been working toward all along. Not through intention, but through simple attrition. The roughness worn away, the urgency released, the constant striving finally set down. What remains is peace. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of no longer needing to figure anything out. Not the peace of achievement, but the peace of acceptance. Deep, quiet, uncomplicated acceptance of this moment, this body, this life, exactly as it is. You don't need to wait for anything else to feel this. You don't need anyone's permission or validation. You don't need to earn it or deserve it or become someone worthy of it. It's already here. You're already here, in this moment, breathing, aware, alive. That's the whole thing. That's all it ever was. Just this presence, this ongoing experience of being. And when the time comes, as it comes for everything, when this particular wave settles back into the ocean, it won't be a tragedy. It will be natural, a completion, a return to the source. The ocean doesn't mourn individual waves. It just keeps moving, keeps being, keeps expressing itself in endless forms. And you're one of those forms. Temporary, beautiful, part of the whole. Your life doesn't need to go on forever to matter. It matters because it happened, because you were here, because for this brief time the universe expressed itself as you. And that was enough. That was always enough. So rest now, stop fighting, stop worrying, stop trying to be more than you are. Just be here, in this moment, in this body, in this life. Listen to the quiet, feel the peace, notice the light. You're home. You always were. And whatever time remains, spend it gently, spend it noticing. Spend it being exactly what you are, a natural part of this world, living naturally, aging naturally, resting naturally into the great peace that holds everything. The universe asks nothing more of you than your presence. And here you are, present, aware, alive, enough.